All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we're going to be covering different ways to voice all of the diatonic tones in the key of B major. In the key of B major is the 1. All right, the 1 is typically a major chord, so we can play a major triad there. B, D sharp, and F sharp. Right? We could also make this a sus2 chord, so instead of playing the 3rd, play the 2nd. So that's B, C sharp, and F sharp. Okay. Or we can make it a sus4, which means instead of playing the 3rd, play the 4th. So that is B, E, and F sharp. Okay. Or we can fatten up our major chord by adding in the 9th or the 2. Okay. So that's a few different options there on the 1. Some other things you can do is you can play the B or the 1 as a major 7th chord. How do I form a major 7th? Find the 3rd tone of that major chord, 1, 3. So that's D sharp, and make that minor. D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. Alright? Once you got that down, you can also look at this as a major 9th chord. How do I form a major 9th on the 1? Find the 5th scale degree. So 1, 3, 5 is F sharp, and play a major chord. F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp with that B in the bass. Basically will give you that major 9th type of sound. And then, of course, one thing that you can do is you can play chordal chords in your right hand off of the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th tone of the scale. So the 3rd tone is going to be that D sharp, so form a chordal chord off of that. That sounds good when you do it. You can do it off of the 2nd scale degree, right? So you got the 3, the 2. You can do it off the 7th scale degree, right? Gives you kind of a 13th sound. And you can do it off of the 6th scale degree. Alright. So you have it off of the 3, 2, 7, and the 6. Alright. So that's chord options and things you can do on the 1 in the key of B. On the 2, we know the 2 in B is going to be C sharp, and the 2 according to the number system is typically minor. So we can play a minor chord here. So we have C sharp minor, C sharp, E, and G sharp. Right? You can also make this a minor 7th chord by finding the 3rd tone of that minor. Right? So 3rd is going to be 1, 3, and playing a major chord. So if I play E major over that C sharp minor, it gives me a C sharp minor 7th sound. And that E major is just E, G sharp, and B. Okay. You can also play a minor 9th here. How do I form the minor 9th? How do I find the minor 9th? Find the 5th scale degree of this chord. 1, 3, and 5 is G sharp, and play that as a minor chord. G sharp minor is G sharp, B, and D sharp. And again, you can move that chord around in terms of its inversions. Okay. So that's your minor 9th chord. And then you can play this as a minor 11th. How do I play a minor 11th? Well, I form my minor chord, go down a whole step from the root, which is B, and play a major chord. So B, D sharp, and F sharp. And then as always, you can invert that around, and it sounds good. That's your C sharp minor 11th chord. Alright, and then the chordal chord trick, that can be used on minor chords is find the root of the minor chord you're on. So C sharp minor has a root of C sharp, and form a chordal. C sharp, F sharp, and B. And that's another way to give you a minor 11th type of sound. Alright, so that's things that you can do off of the 2. Let's go ahead and look at the 3rd scale degree in the key of B. Before we get there, I want to remind you to make sure that you like, click, and subscribe to the channel. That way you can be notified of more awesome content as soon as it's uploaded. Alright, so the 3rd scale degree in the key of B is D sharp. Okay, the 3rd scale degree can be played as like a 1 over the 3. So the 1 in B is going to be B. So play B major over that. You can suspend the 2nd. So instead of playing that D sharp, play the C sharp. Okay. So that's something that you can do there. And you can also play the quarter chords off of the second scale degree. So 1, 2 is going to be C sharp. That's one way to look at it, or just play the quarter chord that's a whole step down from the tone that you're on in your root. So a whole step down from D sharp is C sharp, form a quarter using that. So that's something you can do on the 3 also. Okay. Now the 3 could also be played as a minor chord. So 1, 2, 3. I can play this as a minor triad. So that's D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. I can play this as a minor 7th. How do I form a minor 7th chord? Find the 3rd and play that as a major chord. So F sharp major over that D sharp gives me my D sharp minor 7th. Right? That's another way to look at it. We could play this as a minor 9th. How do I form the minor 9th? Take your minor triad, find the 5th, which is A sharp, and play that as a minor chord. A sharp, C sharp, and F. And that gives me my minor 9 sound. Okay. And then another thing you can do is play the 3rd as a minor 11th. So 1, 3, 5. How do I find the minor 11th? Find my root, go down a whole step, C sharp, and play a major chord. C sharp, F, and G sharp as a major. And that gives you your minor 11th sound. Alright, so that's things you can do on the 3. Just like I mentioned before, if you're going for another type of minor 11th sound, you can form a quarter chord off of the root of the chord that you're in. So if I'm trying to play an E, if I'm trying to play a D sharp minor 11th type of sound, just form a quarter chord off of the D sharp in your right hand, and then play your normal D sharp minor in your left. And that works. Alright, so that's stuff that you can do on the 3. Let's take a look at the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're on the E. The 4, according to the number system, is typically major. So you can play a major triad there, which is E, G sharp, and B. Right? You can do this as a sus chord, sus 2. So instead of playing the G sharp, I'm going to play an F sharp. Right? You can play this as a major 7th by finding the 3rd of it. So the 3rd, the flat 3rd of this is going to be, or the 3rd of it is an A flat or G sharp. So play this G sharp as a minor triad. So G sharp, B, and D sharp. Alright, that's one way to look at it, as a major 7th, or you can play this as a major 9th. How do I play this as a major 9th? Find the 5th. So 1, 3, 5 is B. Play that B major over that regular E, and that gives you your major 9th type of sound on your 4th scale degree. Okay, and then you have the quarter chord trick, where you can do quarter chords off of the 3rd. And now this is me thinking like I'm in E for the moment. So off of the 3rd of E, 1, 2, 3, off of the 2nd of E, off of the 7th of E, and off of the 6th of E. Okay. And all of those things work. Alright, so that's chord options and things that you can do on the 4. Let's take a look at the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so on the 5, when we're playing contemporary songs, the 5, it can typically be major according to the number system. So that's F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp. You can make it sus 2, which means instead of playing the 3rd, I'm going to play the 2nd. Right? Or you can make it an add 2. So I'm going to play the 1, 3, 5, but add that 9 or that 2nd, however you want to look at it. Alright, so that's some things you can do. The 5 can also be used to take us back to the 1. And how do we use the 5 to go back to the 1? We basically add tension to the chord, and then that will help us to get back to the 1 where we're going to resolve that tension. So on the 5, that F sharp, we can play an F sharp major, but how do I add the tension that wants me to go back to the 1? You basically want to add in a flatted 7th. So 1, 3, and 5. And I'm referring to the flatted 7th of this chord. So the flatted 7th of F sharp is E. Because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a major 7th. Flat that, and that's your flatted 7th or your dominant chord. And it wants to go back to the 1. Okay, can you hear that? Okay, sounds good, right? So that's something you can do on that 5 to take you back to the 1. You can play an F sharp dominant 7th chord, and it does a good job of resolving back to that 1. Okay. Now another thing you can do is you can just suspend the 5. How do we suspend it? Well, you're going to play the 5 in your root. To suspend it, play the 4 as a major chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is E. So play E major, E, G sharp, and B. And you can play the various inversions, and that helps you to go back to the 1 also. Alright, another thing you can do on the 4 or on the 5 is play a 4, but instead of a major, play a major 7th. So E major 7th, E, G sharp, B, and D sharp over that 5 or the root. Makes me want to go back to that 1 also. Alright, so you can play the 4 as a major over the 5, the 4 as a major 7th over the 5. Another thing you can do is play a 4 as a diminished 7th. So that's E diminished 7th, right? And you can invert it, and it sounds good when you go back to the 1. Okay, so that's something else that you can do. Alright, and then something else that I enjoy doing is playing the 3rd of the key that I'm in. So if I'm in B, 1, 2, 3, the 3rd is E flat or D sharp. I'll play that as a major chord, right? And it sounds great, okay? So that's something else that you can do. Alright, so that's things that you can do on the 5. Let's look at the 6th scale degree. So on the 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're on that G sharp. One of the common things to do to play to get you more of a one of the common things to do in that 6 is to play the 4 as a major chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. So E major over that G sharp. You can do that, or you can play an E sus2 chord over the G sharp, and that sounds good. Okay, and this is typically used when you're doing that 6, 7, 1 walk up. Okay, so you can do it with a sus chord, the 4 sus chord, or you can do it with just the 4 as a major chord, or you can even do it as a 4 as the add 9 or add 2. Okay, so that's some things that you can do on the 6 to make it sound more contemporary or make it sound more major. Of course, the 6, according to the number system, is naturally minor. So with that being said, we can play the 6 as a regular minor triad. G sharp, B, and D sharp. Okay, you can also make this a minor 7th by going to the 3rd of that minor chord, which is B, and playing a major. So B major with the G sharp in the bass gives you a G sharp minor 7th. Okay, or you can play this as a minor 9th by playing the 5th of that minor chord. So 1, 3, 5 is D sharp. Play that 5 as a minor chord. Okay, that gives you a minor 9 sound. Alright, and you can make this a minor 11 by going a whole step below your root. So if my root is G sharp, go down to F sharp and play a major triad, and that gives you a minor 11th sound. It's a little muddy down here because it's kind of low, so I'm going to invert it up. Okay, but that's like your minor 11th. Okay, we'll make it up here so you can see it in root position. G sharp minor 11th, G sharp minor with an F sharp major. Okay. Alright, and then another thing you can do in your minor chords is you can play a chordal chord using the root. So the root of G sharp minor is G sharp, form a chordal, and that gives you a minor 11th sound as well. Alright, so that's some things that you can do on the 6. Another thing that you can do on the 6 is you can play a chordal chord that's a whole step below the root. And it sounds really good when you're doing the 6, 7, 1 walk up, which we'll talk about the 7 in a moment. But anyways, on the 6, you can play the chordal chord a whole step down from that or off of the 5. And it sounds good. Alright, and then that leaves us with the last scale degree, which is a 7. In the key of B, the 7 is going to be this A sharp. So what are you doing the 7 or the A sharp? Well, if you're playing on more contemporary songs, you want to go for that contemporary voicing or sound. On the 7, you can play the 5 as a major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on that A sharp, I can play an F sharp major, and it sounds really good if you're going from the 6th to the 7th, like I was just talking about. 6, 7, 1. Okay. And instead of playing like that 5 as a major, you can play it as a sus2, right? So 6, 7, 1, and that sounds good. Okay, 6, 7, 1. All right, and then another thing you can do, we already did the chordals. On that 7, I can play the quarter whole step below it, which is G sharp, C sharp, and F sharp, and that sounds good also when you're doing the 6, 7, 1. Okay. And finally, one of the things you can do on the 7, you can use it as a passing tone in like a 7-3-6 progression. And when you do that in gospel music, that 7 is typically a half diminished chord. So how do I play it, or how do I form a half diminished chord? Go up 3 half steps for my root, so 1, 2, 3, which gives me C sharp, and play a minor chord. Okay, and that's my 7 when I play that together, and that's my A sharp 7 flat 5, or my half diminished 7th chord. Alright, and you can do this in different inversions, but that's normally your 7. Then your 3 is typically going to be a dominant chord of some sort, and then that takes you to your 6. Okay, so again, you have your 7, 7, 3, 7, right? 3, 6. Okay, that's your 7-3-6 progression. We'll talk about that particular progression a little bit later, but in essence, that 7 is typically going to be you're going to play that 5 sus2 major at the top, sus2 major at, or that chordal chord over it, or it's going to be a half diminished. Alright, well, that's a fully diminished, or it's going to be a half diminished chord. Or it's going to be a half diminished chord, like a 7, 3, 6. So that's options on all 7 tones of the B major scale. I hope this information is a blessing to you, and I'll see you in the next video.